Rev up your engines!
Claudia says, Scotty, you've been telling us for a while it's a bad time to buy a used vehicle. Will you tell us when is a good time to buy one? All right, I'll put on my fortune teller hat here. You never know. I mean, if somebody dies, there's an estate sale. Sometimes you can get a good deal on that. Somebody joins the Army, you get the kid's car, you get a good deal on that. Here's a real good example of what you could do. Tell all your friends, when they're looking for a new car, if they're buying a new car and they're trading in their old one, tell them you'll buy their trade-in. And you'll give what they give the trade-in value, so they'll get the same price. And you get a deal then, because they traded in, and then the dealer sells it for, $8, $10, $12,000 more than they paid on the trade-in. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. Nothing at all. The Lonely Angel says, Scotty, I just changed the fluid in my automatic transmission CX-7, and now it doesn't shift properly. What can be the problem? The problem is you changed the fluid and you probably shouldn't have. Cars shift an automatic transmission by fluid friction. Dirty fluid has more friction, and it can work better. You take out dirty friction fluid in a worn transmission, put new fluid, the new fluid what? Slips better. You're probably having slippage. If you are, I hope you saved the old fluid. If you did, empty the fluid you put in and put the old fluid back in. A lot of guys, they know that old dirty fluid is keeping it going. They will drop the transmission pan, save the fluid, change the filter. Always a good idea to change the filter because that filters, right? And if it's clogged, it might shift weird. But then they put a new filter in, put the pan on, and put the old fluid back in. I hope you have the old fluid, because if you don't, you're probably screwed and you're going to have the transmission rebuilt or get rid of the car. But here's the thing you could try. Take out a quart of the fluid, put a quart of the Lucas automatic transmission fix in, and pray that it makes it work a little bit better. A lot of times this stuff can work quite well. I just did a car like that, and it made it shift like a dream, and it was shifting horrible. Just by draining 1 quart of the fluid out of the transmission, putting a quart of the Lucas transmission flux, and driving it. Randy Ramirez says, if Honda and Toyota added the Kaizen principle and tend to be known for reliability, why don't other Japanese manufacturers do the same thing like Nissan and Mitsubishi? Because it costs a lot of money to do it. You start making them cheaper, you get more profit, and of course, in the long run, it's a vicious circle. They don't want the cars to last too long. They want you to buy another one every 4 or 5 years, right? I remember years ago, a friend of my father's was executive vice president of his company, and we were talking. He drove a Cadillac, but his wife had a Japanese car. And he said, Scotty, the Americans will never build cars as good as the Japanese. They're too into it. Their culture is different than ours. They think decades ahead, even in Japan. They don't all do it. It's like Chinese stuff. You always hear me railing about Chinese, this, that being bad quality. They do make some good stuffs in China. Some of the stuff they make in China is excellent. A lot of it's crap. You got to know exactly who's doing what. And of course, there's always the overarching profit motive these days that tends to push people towards making crap so they can make more money. That's the American way. We've exported that all around the world, I guess. Heaven Marie, I want to purchase a Honda CR-V 2000, but the lady says the ABS light and SRS light is on. It won't pass inspection. It's got 150,000 miles for $2,700. Those are excellent vehicles, but first, you might want to check the law where you are. Most places, at least in the United States, the anti-lock brakes is seen as an add-on system, as are the airbags. For example, in Tennessee, or in Texas, it doesn't fail the inspection because of that. You might check the laws in your local area. If you have to have those on in your state, don't buy it. No one knows. ABS systems and airbag systems can cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to fix. But on the other hand, if you don't need it and you're driving, it runs and rides okay, nothing wrong with that at all. If you do have to have them in your area, don't buy it. It's too iffy. Brady G says, I got a 96 Grand Cherokee Laredo. What are your thoughts? Okay, it's old as the hills, but they made them better in 1996. If it still runs and shifts good, hey, it can be a good vehicle. Now, it's a gas hog. It's a Cherokee Laredo. You probably got that straight 6-cylinder engine, which has a lot of power, but it's not very good on gas mileage. But be that as it may, they're decent vehicles if taken care of. Now, 96 is old, but you could keep fixing a vehicle like that because it's simpler. It doesn't have all the computer crap that a modern car has. It's going to break down. Nobody's going to be able to figure out how to fix it, and that's the end of your car. So it could be a very good vehicle if it was taken care of. P says, I got a 2016 Chevy Traverse with 90,000 miles. On a cold start, it seems like it does one single misfire, no codes, runs great otherwise. Traverses, I'm not a big fan of them, but you got it. You got one misfire, you feel. Don't go by feel. What I would do, if you brought me something like that, I would hook up my fancy scan tool. First thing I would check, let's say you got a 6-cylinder engine. I go to the misfire data and I'd look at it for all 6 cylinders. And if it ever misfired, it would show how many times it's misfired. I had one the other day. say 5 of the cylinders had 0 misfires and one had 4,896 misfires. So I knew that was the one that had a problem. You may very well find out it has no misfires and something else is making it run bad. But you gotta start with the basic data on something like that. It's a 16, so it's got pretty good computer analytics in it. I mean, in 5 minutes, I can give you a real good idea. Any good mechanic can. And if you live in the Clarksville area, sometime bring it here. I'll check them out for free, and I'll show you all kinds of stuff on it. It could be a misfire, it could be something else, and you want to pinpoint it with the machine. And it's not like, oh, it takes forever. The machine I have, in 5 minutes, I can tell you whether it has a misfire or not if one particular cylinder. Then you diagnose it for them. But don't guess, because modern cars are too complex to say, well, I think this. No, you need the data in front of you. Joe Bullish says, Scotty, the plastic underpiece on my passenger side fell off on my 04 Honda Civic. Is it a concern? Not really. That's for aerodynamics. You get a tiny bit of better gas mileage to do it for the ratings when they build the cars. It's not that big of a deal. What I do is, if it's completely gone, who cares? If part of it's still hanging, I would cut it off and then get those little electric twist connectors, and I would maybe cut a little hole here and there and then connect it to parts of the body with that so it's solid and it doesn't rattle. But if it doesn't rattle, I wouldn't worry about it. They don't serve all that much purpose. On a race car or a fancy car that goes, 190 miles an hour, it's to make them aerodynamic so it sucks air and keeps them on the ground to give them ground force. But on an Odyssey van, my wife's Lexus, we bought it with a bunch of that undercarriage missing because the previous owner had wrecked the bumper and replaced it, and it looks great, but they didn't put the plastic stuff, and we've been driving it 10 years that way. It's not really needed. Mumps Jones says, my brake light never shuts off. Where could it be? It's a 76 Ford F-150. Just go to your brake pedal. There's a brake pedal switch there for your brakes, and when you step on it, it opens. It's probably broken. Just go to it, and you'll see the switch is there. Just unplug the electrical connection. You unplug it, and the brake lights go off, switch is broken. Jose Guillen says, Scotty, is an 04 Jaguar S-Type V6 with 88,000 miles a good deal? Jaguars are generally endless money pits. You didn't say what the price was. You just said it at 88,000 miles. The S-Type were actually better made, and they're not as much of a money pit as the other ones are. But, and this is a giant but, if they think it's worth a lot of money, it's a collector's item, they're nuts. In the United States, those things go for nickels and dimes. Nobody wants them because they're super expensive to repair. It's a 18-year-old now Jaguar. And unless you want a toy that you can play with, you can get it dirt cheap. I'd run away from that one myself. They're beautiful looking cars, and they are better made than the cheaper ones. But still, you'd be kind of leery about it. Why me? Says Scotty, how's the Honda car project going? Well, it's kind of dead in the water now. It turns out that those first Hondas, before the Civics, they had the little 600cc two-cylinder motorcycle engine in the cars they sold in the United States for about 2.5 years. And you can't get parts for those things. It's almost impossible, other than buying old junky parts that somebody says, oh, I got a used engine, I got a used transmission. I can't find a brake master cylinder. I can't even find a kit to repair it, and it's completely shot. It looks like I might have picked the wrong car to mess around with. If you can't get parts, what's the point? You can't fix it. Now, on the other hand, there's a billion guys out there that are throwing Honda motorcycle engines in them because they say the Honda motorcycle engine will fit on that transmission. And if I found out that indeed that's the case, I'll probably end up getting a Honda motorcycle engine and put it in. I'd get an older carbureted one and put that in and run it with the motorcycle engine and not run it with the little two-cylinder car motorcycle engine that they had on it, because the engine that's in it is totally shot. And I can't get anything. The only thing I found was a head gasket for $200-something, which is a rip-off price. The engine's locked up. It won't even turn, so I'm going to have to take the whole thing apart. And if I can't buy cams, cranks, bearings, there's no point in even trying to fix it. I kind of made a doozer of a mistake probably on that one, unless I want to convert it to a motorcycle engine. And I don't know, the body is kind of, halfway. Unless I want to make a rat car out of it with a motorcycle engine, I don't know. I'm kind of in between now what I really want to do with the thing. I didn't realize that nobody can get parts for it. They don't make parts for it. It was such an unpopular thing here in the United States. I met a guy in England that can try to find me parts, but then it's just used parts from a junkyard. And, the thing was made in the 1970s, so used junkyard parts, not such a smart idea to use if they're 50-something years old. That's really pushing it. Hakan Line says, Scotty, I'm wondering if the air-cooled Volkswagen engines in the squareback station wagons are prone to overheating. All those air-cooled Volkswagen engines, I believe it's the number 3 cylinder, is the one that gets the least amount of air. And those are the ones that always wear out first. They overheat. It's a very good design if you're driving on the highway. You go on 50 to 80 miles an hour, you got so much air, it doesn't matter. They're fine. The problem is, they're no good in stop-and-go traffic. If it's 100 degrees outside and you're stuck in traffic, stop and go, they will overheat. And then they wear the number 3 piston. And and the blower and everything gets worn out because that one gets a little hotter than the rest of them. A lot of guys will put extra oil coolers on them. Some will even put oil coolers on them with a little electric fan, so in traffic they can turn the fan on and that'll help dissipate the heat so it won't overheat as much, because they're air-cooled engines, but they're really oil air-cooled engines. The oil is one of the main cooling things in the engine. So if you put an extra oil cooler, put a little fan on it, it would last a lot longer. Those air-cooled engines have a limited lifespan anyways, but if you put a cooler and run it so they actually have more oil, that's more cooling, they will last longer. But they aren't the type of vehicle like a Toyota you can drive 300, 400, 500,000 miles. You're going to have to rebuild the engines on those. They only last so long because they're air-cooled. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.